slide, you'll see some reasons for using social media and why it may help your association. And as we go through this presentation, I have slides from old surveys, previous surveys that show, that kind of highlight what's being shown here. So first of all, your members are already in social media. They're there, so there's really no reason not to be there yourself. It humanizes your brand because it's more like a little more like talking person to person rather than a logo or an advertisement. It can also expand your sphere of influence because you're reaching your members' followers and contacts and so forth. You can open up conversation because it is more conversational and there can be some back and forth. Very important, it draws them to your website and resources because that's basically what you're trying to do when you talk to them on Twitter, Facebook, so on. Another great advantage is you can communicate very quickly from the time a thought comes in your head that you want to tell somebody or something comes up on your website, you can get that out there right away, quicker even than an email blast. It's a form of word-of-mouth communication because once somebody retweets you, comments on your Facebook page, then it's sort of like a endorsement almost of what they are recommunicating through you. And last, we have proof ourselves that it does increase our member satisfaction. Just a couple weeks ago, we conducted some focus groups with new practitioners, and one of the things we asked them was to comment on the best way to communicate with them. While not everybody mentioned social media, there were a lot of them that did, and you can see some of their comments here. I'm always on electronic devices. Again, they're already out there. They want to know what their friends are thinking and doing and talking about. This information comes from a survey conducted in 2012, and this was a new practitioners needs assessment survey. So in this survey, 86% were on Facebook, said they were on Facebook, 24% had a Twitter account, 40% a LinkedIn account, and 16% belong to all three. So you can see you can't just be on one or another because they're in different places. Everybody sort of has the tool that they like the best, it seems. When I said we've measured the fact that it can increase your member satisfaction, this slide shows that. We divided on a survey people who said they were engaged with us in social media and those that weren't. And then we looked at each group's Net Promoter Score, which is an index that we use, and others actually, for measuring customer satisfaction and loyalty. So you can see on the right-hand side, those engaged had a much higher Net Promoter Score than those people who said they were not engaged with us in social media. In fact, it was 135% higher. This slide shows from the survey how often those people that had the accounts went to their accounts. So these are the number of people who said they visit or check once a week or more. And a lot of them check several times a day. And I can guarantee you that a lot more people than visit our website or most likely yours. So if you can catch them there and then drive them to your website, you'll get them there a lot more often than if they just happen to think about wandering over to your site. So in your messages on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you can, in fact, get them over to your site. So here are some examples on Twitter on this side and Facebook where we've tried to get them to come to resources on our site that talk about our meetings, news updates, nominations, and stories about our members. This slide shows, now this is a 2011 survey, so it's a little bit old, but the point I want to get across is a lot of, even 2 years ago, a lot of people are using digital communication. And you'll see right on the top there is text messaging. So 87% said they text message, 73% at this time, now it's higher, you'll see in a later slide, log into a social networking site, and so on down the line. The thing that's interesting is this time I compared this to some national data from the Pew Research Center, and at that time 73% of cell phone owners were text messaging. 65% of adults nationally had logged into a social networking site. So pharmacists, when you hear about how often people are using social media, pharmacists are right there. They're not exceptionally higher or exceptionally lower. So if you're not doing your own research, but you do see other research from some of these other good sources, you'll know that it's probably pretty consistent to your membership. This slide shows the difference between, and again, this is 2011, so these numbers are a little higher now, but it shows the difference between students, new practitioners, and practitioners. So while for Facebook, students and new practitioners are using Facebook, or were using Facebook a lot more often than practitioners, 6 out of 10 practitioners were using it in 2011. Now on Connect and LinkedIn, it's sort of the opposite. There's more practitioners using it than new practitioners and students. Twitter, the spread looks more like Facebook, and so does Google+. Again, comparing this to adults nationally, 13% of online adults use Twitter at that time, and 73% use some social networking site. So this would suggest here that about 90% of our members at this time use some type of social networking site. So again, it's not just the young people that are using these things. This slide shows the number of people who are using, the percent of each of these groups for each one of these social networking sites that are using the site for business or school versus personal or home use. So again, on Facebook, there are more people using, much more people using Facebook for personal use than for work or school. However, students used it more for school than the other groups did for work. On ASHP Connect, that's ASHP's social networking site, as you would expect, more people are using it for work or school. LinkedIn, same thing as ASHP Connect. It's more of a social business site for social networking. Twitter looks a little bit more like Facebook, but even here, more people use Twitter for school or work than they do Facebook. Now, Facebook, they're there more. These other sites, they're not there as often as Facebook, but they also use them more for a work situation. This slide shows, when asked if how they prefer to receive and share information from us, you'll see that a lot more of them say they'd rather use email or go to our website, but in fact we know from other survey data that they're not. They do delete some of your emails because they get so many. They're not remembering constantly to go to your website and see if there's anything new. So with ASHP Connect and some of these other channels, while they say they don't prefer to get the information from you there, they're there. So sneak in there. Pull them over to your website. This slide shows between 2006 and 2011 how much certain digital communication increased. So for new practitioners, or for practitioners, it almost doubled in terms of text messaging, 42 to 81%. And new practitioners went up quite a bit, and so did students, but not as much as practitioners. And a lot of these things we found from focus groups and just our own personal use, practitioners are starting to get their first delve into the digital age was so they could talk to their children and new practitioners. This is the percent that said they logged into a social networking site. So you can see the growth since 2006 has really been in this area with practitioners. New practitioners, somewhat too, that almost doubled. And students were, a lot of students were already there, but even they've grown. Listen to a podcast. There is growth there. You'll see it's not nearly at the level of some of the other channels. But even so, 1 out of 3 practitioners say they listen to podcasts, and 1 out of 5 students and new practitioners. Now we're going to talk about Twitter for a little bit here. And the reason why you see David Letterman on here is because he had some very interesting little episodes on his show a while back about Twitter. And come to find out, it's not just with him, but Twitter is a somewhat difficult thing, more difficult than Facebook to kind of catch on to at first. So he had a whole thing on his show about how stupid the Twitter machine was. He called it the Twitter machine. And he said he really didn't understand it, so therefore he didn't like it, and he thought it was stupid. And he went on to talk about it more, and in this conversation, although it was funny, he actually explains in a way very well why it works. And he was talking about who needs Twitter, and he doesn't know why it was such a cool thing that Ashton Kutcher had over 1 million followers at that time, because he was pretty sure that if he checked with the people at the switchboard, he probably got that many phone calls a day. So he goes on to put it down. Well, and then in later episodes, Demi Moore comes on the show and helps him with his first tweet, and that's also really interesting. So if you'd like some humor commentary about it and see how somebody actually delved into it who was a non-believer, that would be an interesting thing to look at. But this thing about how many people you can impact and how you can't do that on the switchboard, this slide demonstrates that. So again, this was a few years ago, so some of these numbers are a little old, but somebody tweeted this tweet that ASHP official follows. So this person had 32 followers. So when he first tweeted this, 32 people saw it. Well, then ASHP official retweeted it. At the time we had 1,300 followers. Now we have 8,000 almost. And then one of our followers, Safety Nurse, retweeted our tweet, and she had about 3,000 at the time. And then one of her followers retweeted it, and so on. So the guy who started out with 32 people seeing his message ended up with 5,000 people exposed, almost 6,000 people exposed to it. A great time to really get involved in social media is during meetings, because for Twitter, it's a great time to introduce your members to it, and you can get them talking about the meeting and about your organization. So we have successfully engaged a good share of our members in Twitter during our meetings. One of the ways we've done this is by having a Twitter contest. So we'll tell people ahead of time, and the rules have changed a little bit over time, but in this particular one I'm showing you, we said that the person who had the best picture and accompanying caption would win the prize. So we felt it was really important to get as many pictures of people having fun or learning at our meeting as possible. To show you the reach here, we had 523 people, this was 2011, tweeting about the meeting. This created about 3,000 tweets, and that reached nearly 160,000 people. And because there was more than one tweet, that was 1.3 million exposures. The highest day was here, and if we could even look at this day, we had, not surprisingly, the most tweets during the opening general session. So you can see here, 70,000 people heard just about the opening, or Monday tweets at the meeting. And just for this time period, there were 545 tweets, 304 retweets. So that's how you get up to this big exposure. And here are some of the pictures that were generated. Really great things that even an advertisement from us could not produce probably the impact they would have, because this is things they're showing their friends. So I'll just go through some of these slides. This is about Farm Prep Review Board. This is showing people they're putting up their posters. They also had some very clever captions you can see here. This was Residency Showcase, the only crowd bigger than the line for coffee. This was something that was happening in a new practitioner's educational session. This was at a party at night. Now I bet a lot of young people saw this picture and wished they had gone to the meeting. Another tweet about one of the educational sessions here. And then a particular tweet about the informatic Pearl session. So that's all I've prepared today, and I'll turn the floor back over to Beverly.
And I, in turn, will turn the floor to Dawn Benton, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the California Society of Health System Pharmacists, and she'll be joined by Megan Blackwell, who's their Director of Membership and Marketing. And we've asked them to talk a little bit about how they've optimized social media with regard to reaching out to their members. So Dawn and Megan.
Can you hear me, Beverly?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Perfect. Okay, this is Dawn Benton from CSHP, and Megan is listening in, and if I say anything wrong, she'll be sure to correct me from Denver. So anyway, we've been using social media for quite a while out here in California, and we have many different ways that we've approached it. But the best tip that we can give is that we use Hootsuite to streamline all of our social media posts. So Hootsuite is a free social media management system for businesses and organizations to collaboratively execute campaigns across multiple social networks from one secure web-based dashboard. So this management system allows us to post once, and it gets pushed out to our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn accounts. So we're not having to log into each one separately to keep them active. Additionally, it allows us to set up and schedule posts in advance to have them set out at a particular time when we might not be available to send that particular post. What we post mainly are interesting articles, photos of our members with legislators. Photos are very popular, and anything we send out via email. We know people are inundated with email, so it's another way to reach them and get the information out. Another way we've been trying to communicate with members is through staff posts. So we try to stay current with posting about hosting or attending meetings with our committees or other organizations that we are collaborating with to showcase the day-by-day happenings at CSHP. 2 specialty campaigns we've done with social media were associated with this year's Pharmacy Week and Pharmacy Technician Day. With Pharmacy Week, we created and sent out a fun, superhero-themed Pharmacy Week poster and encouraged our members to post pictures of themselves with the poster. And then for Pharmacy Technician Day, we designed a printable sign for people to fill in their name and then post a picture of themselves holding their customized sign, and then emailed out a compilation of the pictures and selected a random person to receive a $25 gift card. And in regards to Twitter, we have specified a hashtag for people to use at seminars, similar to what you were saying about how you use it at your annual meeting. And it's publicized all over our meeting signage so that if people forget, they can pick it up anywhere. And it's very fun, and we find that even our exhibitors use it. And our LinkedIn group is closed to ensure that we moderate all the content. So we approve members and moderate posts and discussions. Furthermore, by being a moderator, we're able to block advertising and then contact them to negotiate potential advertising revenue and have them go through us for that. And our last social media channel is our YouTube channel. And we post all of our video content on our channel, free of charge, of course, and then are able to upload and or embed any videos onto our website, other social media channels, or email campaigns. So that's a quick summary of our social media use. CSHP is active and finds it a valuable way to stay connected to all of our members.
Dawn, this is Beverly. Those are great tips. Thank you. If I could impose on you for a minute longer, could you give us a little snapshot of how you all use social media in your recent legislative advocacy campaign?
Well, everything that we would send out in an email, any news alert, any update, we also put it out through Hootsuite. And then if we were, to use it in our grassroots campaign, we mobilized our membership through that as well. So we used it through our campaign, but we didn't use it any differently than we use it for every other piece of business that we do. But it does ensure that we reach all of our young members quickly and get them to spread the word and to create hype. And I think it probably contributed very positively to the amount of information that was that our student members were so aware of every detail of the legislation as it went through the process and when it got signed. And I would attribute that to social media education.
And just so the audience knows, CSHP used their social media as a driver for having people contact their state representatives and to sort of develop a letter writing campaign and reach outs during the campaign, which I guess lasted about 3 months, 4 months, probably seemed like a year. But
the grassroots campaign started in April and finished in September, end of September. So we used it every step of the way. But I think that, in terms of how, for organizations that aren't really active with social media, if you think about everything that you have to use email to post out now, we, you can kind of just say, well, if I post it out through email, I can do it as well through social media and just have another avenue of getting the word out. And then you get young people involved who are very savvy, who are your members, to volunteer to help you grow that within your organization.
And this is Beverly Black again. To sort of add on to that, we have several affiliates that use social media in sort of a push-out format, like if they are planning either a local meeting, a regional meeting, or their annual meeting, they'll target an educational session or a topic, and over several days we'll push out a variety of Twitter and LinkedIn messages moving people toward the website to register for the meeting. So I know several of our state affiliates have used that mechanism quite effectively to get people to attend their meeting. Also, it's a good way to keep your members, as Dawn mentioned, very informed and very engaged as well, which goes back to Colleen's point about people who are actively engaged in social media tend to be people who it's easier to retain as members because they feel like they're well looped into the organization. Does anybody else on the line have any ways that their organization has optimized social media that they want to share with us? And if you're talking and we can't hear you, it's because we've got you muted. We're trying to unmute you, but if you want to just drop us a note in the question section. Yeah, we're unmuting you now, so if you want to talk, there we go. So does anyone want to? All right, not hearing any. I think we may have covered some of the ones that are most commonly used. Another example that I had seen, the American Society of Association Executives at their annual meeting last year encouraged people who were not at the meeting to submit questions and comments on particular educational sessions. So they were providing a live audio feed to the session and then encouraging people to provide comments or questions to the presenter, and they actually appeared on the screen in the room where we were sitting. So lots of people could virtually participate in the meeting in that manner. A couple of sort of logistical or legal issues, just a story to remind you of the importance of sort of backing some of this up. Several of you have asked for templates of policies on social media. When I send out the link to this webinar, I'll include a template that one of our affiliates developed for a social media policy that we feel is a very good one that we're happy to share, so I'll be sending that out. But one of our state affiliates had a member who was very actively engaged in social media, and they asked him to sort of be the Twitter czar, if you will, or the social media czar, and post things on their Twitter account for them, but no one followed what he was posting. And he had a very different personal philosophy and ideas than the organization did, but he was appearing to be the voice of the society through the Twitter account. So if Burns Apollo were here, she would counsel you to be very careful about who is your sort of official spokesperson through your Twitter account. Frequently, it works best to only have one individual, generally the president, serve as the official voice of the organization. But just remember that anything that's posted by a board member would be construed by the average member as the policy of the organization. So you need to take a little care in that format to be sure that someone's not representing your organization differently than your organization feels or what their policies are. So do we have any questions? I don't see any that have been posted other than the ones we've talked about, a social media policy and sharing ideas that other affiliates have used. I know that some of you feel it might be a bit of a leap to get into social media because sometimes it's hard to have enough time to constantly post something to Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook. Some state affiliates have asked their student societies to actively become engaged in that, or if they have like a student forum, they've used students or new practitioners to sort of start driving things. So that's an idea if nobody who sits on your board or your education committee or another related committee wants to take that on, it's a good way to actively engage other folks. So do we have any other questions? Not seeing any. Well, thank you for sharing some time with us this afternoon and chatting a little bit about how to optimize social media. We want to let you know about two upcoming things. If you're going to be at the mid-year meeting, on Sunday, December the 8th, from 1 o'clock until 5 o'clock, we're doing the Affiliate Leaders Conference, which is for members of boards of directors, presidential officers, executives, committee members, committee chairs, anyone in a leadership position within a state affiliate. It's going to be a three-part program. The first is going to be a speaker on leadership, organizational leadership, and she's going to talk about ways to think outside the box and sort of energize your organization. The second speaker will be Aretha Hankinson, who's going to talk about a new public relations program that we're offering. And the third speaker will be Nick Gentile, who's our new State Government Affairs and Grassroots Advocacy Director. and he's going to talk about some federal and state initiatives and several new toolkits that we'll be rolling out. So that's Sunday afternoon from 1 o'clock until 5 o'clock in room W303 on the 3rd level of the Convention Center, and we hope to see many of you there. Then our next affiliate webinar will be in January, probably the 3rd week in January, and we're going to focus again on advocacy, and Nick Gentile will be joining us in doing a webinar on upcoming legislative efforts at the state legislature. So if there are topics that you know are coming up in your state legislature, if you want to share them with us, we'd be happy to talk about them. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We hope each and every one of you and your families have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we hope to see you in Orlando next week.